early right now. I just saw some reports coming out, and I don't want that to happen. I was actually saddened to hear it, but they are getting absolutely hammered in China. Their factories are closing all over China because we're not taking their product. We don't want their product unless they're going to be fair with us.
California District Judge Jennifer Thurston demanded CBP agents cannot arrest suspected illegal migrants without a warrant.
Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the Maryland man who was deported to a prison in El Salvador. There's new fallout because after President Trump suggested he could get him back to the U.S. if he wanted to.
Has a formal request from this administration been made?
Well, I would never tell you that. And you know who else I'll never tell? A judge. Because the conduct of our foreign policy belongs to the President of the United States and the executive branch, not some judge.
It is a sad reflection on the state of our media and many of the outlets represented in this room that you obsessively try to shill for this MS-13 terrorist.
National Security Advisor Mike Waltz and his deputy, Alex Wong, are set to step down from their posts. Right now, it is not clear why that is happening or who is going to possibly replace them, but this is a very, very developing story.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard today's edition of Human Events Daily here in Washington, D.C. Today is May 1st. 2025, Anno Domini. Well, as people have heard over the past couple of hours after the news broke, President Trump is now changing up his national security team with a new position opening up at the National Security Council for the National Security Advisor and the Deputy National Security Advisor. Many people will remember that Mike Flynn, General Mike Flynn, was President Trump's very first national security advisor all the way back in 2017. Although from what I've been hearing as of this point, that what the intention here is to bring forward the Steve Witkoff, Scott Bessent plan for the Trump agenda writ large. Deals, negotiations, grand strategy, leverage, not military attacks, not new and open warfare, not bombing runs, not starting new wars, not backing proxy forces like we've done so many times around the world that get us entrenched deeper and deeper into these foreign policy disasters, but to make these one-on-one deals and perhaps even leaning on someone like Steve Witkoff, who doesn't have a background in government or a background in the administrative state. What he has is a background in diplomacy and loyalty to the president and the president's wishes. And this is something that a lot of people in Washington, D.C. don't seem to understand. Steve Witkoff is championing the president's agenda, which is the agenda that the American people voted for in November. Won the popular vote. They won 7 out of 7 of the swing states. Democrats, especially some union members, as I found out, don't like when you bring that up. But it's true. The American people did not vote for war. So as we move forward through the fourth turning, the idea is that America is going to win. Jack Posobiec, Human Events Daily. We'll be right back.
understand what America First truly means.
Welcome to the Second American Revolution.
All right, Jack Posobiec, here we are back live, Washington, D.C. Human Events Daily. Want to also welcome in the third hour of the Charlie Kirk Show and his audience on the Salem Radio Network. Folks, with Elon Musk's dedication to Doge, he will likely uncover the hidden spending potentially on such things as, I don't know, what about weather modification? That's something that a lot of people say has played a major role in the decline of people's health. The influx of sicknesses taking over in America, we know it's not natural. And look, we've all seen them. Trails in the sky, fogs, all sorts of things that are going on out there. People are talking about this new bacteria, the Seriata marcescens bacteria in the samples that have been tested. With the wellness company's medical emergency kit, you can tackle serious health concerns to avoid hospitalization or until you see a doctor. This compact blue case is your portable urgent care, stocked with ivermectin, Z-Pak, amoxicillin, and 6 other essential prescription medications right at your fingertips. You can literally order from your couch in minutes. The process is fully digital. Their medical board created a guidebook that outlines common treatments for UTI, strep throat, bacterial infections, respiratory illnesses, and so much more. All it takes is filling out a digital intake form, and within 1 to 2 weeks, your kit arrives at your door. Don't let illnesses catch you off guard. Order your kit now by heading to twc.health/POSO and use promo code POSO to save up to $30 off, plus free shipping. Kits are available to U.S. residents only. All right, folks, huge news, obviously, out of the White House. And I really think this means it's a step in the direction of what I've called Trump's grand strategy, the Trump doctrine, if you will. This is something that was championed, by the way, at hundreds of rallies and political events all throughout, not just 2024, but even the years prior. President Trump and a vote for him meant a vote towards peace, a vote towards negotiations, not World War III, which is exactly where Biden and Kamala Harris were sending all of us vis-a-vis the Ukraine war, then the war between Israel and Gaza, and so many more flashpoints. You think about Taiwan, you think about the South China Sea, and all sorts of other things where the flare could go up. I want to bring in Vish Burra. He's the producer on the Matt Gaetz Show, former producer of War Room. You guys know him. What's up, Vish?
Thanks for having me, Jack. I'm having a good time out here in San Diego.
Out in San Diego, out in God's country, and it's getting nice out there too. Vish, what is it with where people still don't quite seem to understand that the America First agenda is not the agenda of going around and picking fights and battles and wars and military action with other countries around the world that have not attacked us directly, and also that the idea that we can deal with things in a different way. And by the way, who's someone that I have to say this, and I talked about earlier on War Room, Steve, one of the guys in the New York Post who's out there today, or, I guess yesterday, dropped this piece about Steve Witkoff, this massive attack on Witkoff that's going on, was Douglas Murray. And he's saying, in the New York Post article, and I've had to respond to a number of his articles because he attacked MAGA on Ukraine. Now he's attacking Witkoff on Iran, says this guy has no idea what he's doing. He's completely out of his depth. He's wild. He's out of control. And it's like, he's doing exactly what the president was elected to do, and he's loyal to President Trump, and he's working as an envoy of Trump. We've had envoys throughout history like this. Vish, why are the attacks on Witkoff going on, and what is this sort of interplay between the neoconservative, neoliberal wing of sort of the party and the ascendant MAGA America First wing?
Jack, that's actually a great question. What we have to remember is when we talk about the America First agenda and why we are pursuing the America First agenda, it really simply boils down to this. What the agenda is meant to do is to maximize the value of American citizenship. And so every move is meant to do that. And when I had you on the Matt Gaetz show, when I was guest hosting about a month ago, you went into great length to describe what was called the Great Deal. And that is exactly what Donald Trump went on the campaign trail and promised to people and to Americans, not just in 2016, but again in 2024, that he was going to bring about a great deal, whether it was about immigration, whether it was about trade and jobs with tariffs, and also foreign policy. And in order for a great deal to come about, you need great deal makers. And that is exactly why you are seeing now the convergence of attacks on Steve Witkoff, President Trump's envoy to practically everything, but namely Russia and Iran. Steve Witkoff is a guy who knows how to use leverage, who knows how to negotiate, and who knows who the primary stakeholders are, which is Donald Trump and the American people. And so now, why you are seeing these attacks on Mr. Witkoff is because the Douglas Murrays of the world, the James Lindsays of the world, these are what I call the Fukuyamaists, right? These are the people who are essentially fully invested in the post-World War II liberal consensus that has ruled and ruined the world over the last 80 years. And so when Donald Trump comes in and says, I'm going to secure a new great deal, this is what we're going after. We are ending the post-war consensus and starting a new one for the 21st century.
So, Vish, this post-war consensus that you're discussing, is this merely foreign policy, or is foreign policy and trade and all these various things intrinsically connected?
It's all connected, Jack. It's not just the foreign policy. The foreign policy is one aspect of it. But when we talk about maximizing the value of American citizenship and not maximizing the value of shareholders in some stock market or in some multinational company, this is what we're talking about when we talk about taking down the post-World War II consensus. It's because what the post-World War II consensus, what it essentially boiled down to was that America, because it's the hegemon, it's going to take a position where it's going to allow its economy and its wealth to deflate and be broadly distributed all across the world at the expense of everyday Americans, the working class that we fight for every day, and the working class that pays for everything. And so now when that working class says, no, I want my jobs back here, I want my value to be created here in America, I want the tariffs to protect American goods, but I also want our foreign policy to protect American lives and protect our soldiers and make sure they're not out there on excursions and expeditions that don't do anything to maximize the value of American citizenship. This is exactly what these Fukuyamaists, these people who are clinging to the post-World War II liberal order, this is exactly what they don't want, but this is exactly what President Trump is delivering.
And Vish, people have heard, of various institutions that prop up this post-war consensus or the liberal order, the rules-based order, as Blinken used to call it. Have you heard of the UN? Have you heard of NATO? Have you heard of the Bretton Woods Agreement, the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, the World Bank, all of which are directly associated now with the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, all of these various, as we would call them, globalist organizations, the Atlantic Council and others, so many think tanks that are associated with this. And there's various, British and European continental organizations that are also tied directly, intrinsically into this. This is the global power structure. And what President Trump is now doing on foreign policy, on tariffs and trade, and on immigration is actually working to roll that back and put America, because we've extended ourselves too far. We've been completely overextended. That's why we can't afford things anymore. But in the meantime, you go look at Shanghai, you go look at Shenzhen, you go look at Chongqing, and all of these cities in China, the Three Gorges Dam, and you say, how come they have all that? And yet Detroit is falling apart and Chicago is falling apart. That's why President Trump was in Michigan just a couple nights ago. We're going to be right back. Jack Posobiec on with Vish Burra here, Human Events daily. Stay tuned. Quick break.
To this Real America's Voice news break, I'm Terrence Bates. The tide is rolling at the University of Alabama, and today it's bringing in President Trump. This evening's remarks in Tuscaloosa will be the president's first to college graduate since retaking the White House. During this graduation season, he'll also address graduating cadets at West Point. President Trump won the state of Alabama with 64% of the vote back in November, en route to winning the presidency for a second time. While the White House is describing the president's speech as a commencement address, his remarks are actually a special event created before graduation ceremonies begin tomorrow. Following his stop in Tuscaloosa, the president will head back to Florida for a long weekend at Mar-a-Lago. Senate Republicans backed President Trump and barely vote down a resolution that would have blocked the president's global tariffs. The 49-49 vote failed thanks to Vice President J.D. Vance's tie-breaking vote and because two senators who appeared to support the idea were absent for the vote, plus three Republicans, Rand Paul of Kentucky, Susan Collins of Maine, and Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, joined all Democrats in supporting the measure. The resolution was designed to end the national emergency under which President Trump is implementing his global tariffs. Despite the Trump tariffs being on a 90-day hold while the administration and its trade partners negotiate deals, many senators on either side of the political aisle are still unconvinced about the president's tariff policies. Former Senator and current Vice President J.D. Vance visited with Senate Republicans earlier this week to assure them that the administration is making progress towards deals with various individual countries. The United States Ukraine Reinvestment Fund is signed, sealed, and delivered after months of negotiating and an Oval Office spat that derailed the initially planned signing of the deal. Under the agreement, the U.S. now has access to Ukraine's valuable rare earth minerals, and in return, Ukraine has assurances about continued U.S. support in its war with Russia. In a statement, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent writes, "This agreement signals clearly to Russia that the Trump administration is committed to a peace process." That's your headline.
Today, they talk about influencers. These are influencers, and they're friends of mine. Jack Posobiec. Where's Jack? Jack, he's done a great job.
All right, Jack Posobiec, we are back live. That's a beautiful, if you're watching us on Real America's Voice right now, that you're looking at a beautiful live shot of the White House. It's a gorgeous day here in Washington. Beautiful spring day on this May 1st. For those of us on the Salem Radio Network, skies are blue and trees are green. President Trump's tie is bright, bright red. We're speaking now with Vish Burra, who is the producer on the Matt Gaetz program. But very quickly, before we get to that, I want to tell you a quick message from today's episode sponsor, because listen up. If you are still drinking that corporate watered down nonsense that passes for coffee, it's time for a serious wake-up call. Blackout coffee isn't just coffee, it's a statement, a declaration that you're done with weak beans and weak values. This is high-octane American roasted fuel for those who grind harder, stand taller, and never back down. Look, people say, Poso, how do you go through all this stuff? You're tooling it up with Jamie Raskin and the Union Thugs. Then you're in the White House with Caroline Leavitt. You're doing the show every day. You got a family. How do you do it? It's Blackout Coffee. All right. And they're not playing games. They are cranking out more bags than ever, shipping faster than ever, and keeping you locked in with coffee that actually fires you up. Whether you're chasing big goals, crushing the daily grind, or just refusing to drink coffee made by people who hate you, Blackout Coffee has got your back. So stop settling. Go to blackoutcoffee.com/Poso and use promo code Poso for 20% off your first order. Brew like a patriot, brew Blackout. That's blackoutcoffee.com/Poso. blackoutcoffee.com/Poso. We're on with Vish Burra, producer of the Matt Gaetz Show. You know him from the War Room. And Vish, we're talking about this phenomenon that I've dubbed the woke light. And you started to see this bubble up last year. People really opposed my anti-communism book for some reason, where I said, basically, what if we stop debating the communists and actually just try to beat them and actually just try to remove them from power in every institution where they hold sway in all of society? And, this whole, let's just have a gentleman's debate about it is never going to work because they're not interested in debate. And certainly anyone who saw my video with Jamie Raskin the other day clearly can see that with their own two eyes. And yet some people will go around saying that, if you just want to fight the communists, well, that's woke. And in fact, you're woke right. And that makes you kind of woke, too. And you go around saying woke things like Christ is king, or when Stephen Miller says we need patriotic education in this country, and Donald Trump says we're going to bring back Columbus Day. Well, that's all woke. That's all about to woke right. I said, you know what? Actually, you guys are acting kind of woke, to be honest, because you're going around telling people who can be on what show, who can be on what podcast, what views we're allowed to listen to. I'm sorry. No, that's not what we do. That's what the woke does. That makes you woke light. And to your point, Vish, they want to go back to sort of the 1990s or even like Barack Obama era consensus of politics, were things like, where basically the atheists were in charge. Like, can we just say it? That was the moment where the atheists, the secularists, the humanists, the materialists, they were in charge for a brief period of time, late 90s. And certainly with great inflection under Obama, it was a complete disaster. COVID was their shining and stinking turd in the punch bowl moment. And now it's time to get back to basics. What say you, Vishbara?
Well, listen, Jack, this can be boiled down to a split that's very simple. This is a war between the talkers and the doers. The talkers, like James Lindsay, Douglas Murray, the woke light people, the Konstantin Kissins of the world, these are all people who are invested in that post-World War II liberal consensus, that Fukuyama-ist sort of end of the world, liberal democracy is the last final form of government that should be implemented, frozen in time forever, and we experienced that beautiful bliss during the 90s, and nobody had to think about politics, right? We want to go back to that. The point, and what they miss is that the reason that we're in this mess is because we had such wide swaths of the population not concerned about our politics. They didn't worry. They were sold a lie that history had ended and that we were going to be in the Gilded Age forever. This is what they want to go back to.
And wouldn't that have been nice? But you know what?
The voices who want to move forward and know that that was all a lie.
And there were some problems going on in the 90s. Immigration being a major unchecked problem that was going on that as few people saw coming. There were certain places like where Stephen Miller was growing up in Santa Monica, California, where it was inflected. Vish, thank you so much for being on, folks. Go follow Vish Burra and check out the Matt Gaetz Show on OAN. One American News, the great One American News. This is Jack Posobiec, and we've got a quick break. We'll be right back here on Human Events, Real America's Voice, and the Salem Radio Network.
Voice Newsbreak. I'm Terrence Bates. The Federal Reserve could soon be under the Doge microscope for potential government waste. Bloomberg News is reporting that Elon Musk is considering a probe of the central bank, citing a costly renovation at the Fed's Washington, D.C. headquarters. In the meantime, Musk joined President Trump and his cabinet on Wednesday. As the administration moves into the next 100 days, Musk is just weeks away from ending his term as the head of Doge.
You're invited to stay as long as you want. At some point, I guess he wants to get back home to his cars and his. He's done an incredible job. $150 billion. Think of this.
Yeah. It's 160 now.
160. They said, oh, it could be more. And a lot of stuff is being worked on. That number could be doubled and even tripled. A lot of things are being worked on that we don't count yet because it's not quite there.
As for the Fed, specifically its chairman, Jerome Powell, both have come under fire from President Trump recently over being slow to lower interest rates. And speaking of President Trump, he is headed to the University of Alabama today. This evening's remarks in Tuscaloosa will be the president's first to college students or college graduates since retaking the White House. During this graduation season, he'll also address graduating cadets at West Point. President Trump won the state of Alabama with 64% of the vote back in November, en route to winning the presidency for a second time. While the White House is describing the president's speech as a commencement address, his remarks are actually a special event created before graduation ceremonies begin tomorrow. Following his trip to Tuscaloosa, the president will head to Florida for a long weekend at Mar-a-Lago. The United States Ukraine Reinvestment Fund is signed, sealed, and delivered after months of negotiating and an Oval Office spat that derailed the initially planned signing of that deal. Under the agreement, the U.S. now has access to Ukraine's valuable rare earth minerals. That's a quick check of your headlines. I'm Terrence Bates.
And Jack, where's Jack? Where's Jack? Where is he? Jack, I want to see you. Great job, Jack. Thank you. What a job you do. You know, we have an incredible thing. We're always talking about the fake news and the bad, but we have guys, and these are the guys who should be getting Pulitzers.
All right, Jack Posobiec back live here, Human Events Daily, Washington, D.C. Just during the break, huge breaking news. I want to bring in also the Salem Radio Network, third hour, Charlie Kirk. Massive breaking news from President Trump breaking this himself. A lot of this was kind of in the air. There was a lot of chatter. I'll just read this new Truth Social that's come out. President Trump, I am pleased to announce that I will be nominating Mike Waltz to be the next United States ambassador to the United Nations. From his time in uniform on the battlefield, in Congress, and as my national security advisor, Mike Waltz has worked hard to put our nation's interests first. I know he will do the same in his new role. In the interim, Secretary of State Marco Rubio will serve as national security advisor while continuing his strong leadership at the State Department. Together, we will continue to fight tirelessly to make America and the world safe again. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So if you remember the background on this, Mike Waltz and Elise Stefanik were both in Congress, pulled by Congress, from Congress to be nominated for President Trump's cabinet. Now, Elise Stefanik never fully went through with her nomination as UN ambassador. Why? Because it looked like her seat was coming up. There were some questions about the House majority. Mike Waltz's seat was up. He was replaced by a Republican. However, then when he moved over as national security advisor, Elise Stefanik had already decided, and President Trump had made the announcement that she would be remaining. So he pulled her nomination a while back. She would be remaining in her seat. So what does that mean? Well, the obvious choice was take Mike Waltz, put him back over to that open seat that Elise Stefanik, or the open nomination for the UN ambassador. So you got Mike Waltz. Congratulations to him going up to be, and he'll be a fantastic ambassador at the United Nations. Then Marco Rubio comes in, and he's going to be dual-hatted. I think there's going to be probably some load sharing with his deputy Secretary of State as well to come in and run the National Security Council in the interim. But the search is on, certainly, and from everything I've heard, they are looking at a number of names for new national security advisor, but Marco Rubio, Secretary of State and national security advisor, acting for the time being. Huge day, huge news, 100-day shakeup. Hey, as Secretary Hegseth said, Secretary of Defense said, things change, people move on. But ultimately, folks, President Trump calls the shots because, as we've been saying, it's his agenda, and it is his agenda that the American people voted for. All right, so we are now getting, I wanted to bring on our next guest from Silent. We're really very excited about this because there's so much that's been going on with the situation, with everything that's been happening. People talking about OPSEC, people talking about ComSec. Wanted to bring on Aaron. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. How you doing, Jack?
Very well. So tell us a little bit more about, and look, I've been talking about comm security ever since, I went on my trip to Ukraine and we were able to use Silent, the Faraday products that are provided. You've got bags, you've got pouches, sleeves, even clothing, by the way, that people can get into now, because this communication security, and by the way, it's not just communications, but it's signals. And this is something that I've even had to be educated on, that you've educated me on since we've been working together with Silent, because this is stuff that affects even your car, your car's key fob when you're trying to look for your car. And actually there was a funny thing, my kids' baseball team, we've got, we found out there's a family on the team that's basically got the same car as us, same color, same style, all this. I think we bought it at the same place. And, but how do we know who's whose? The key fob, right? The key fob is the best way to tell. But people didn't realize, I didn't realize that your key fob can be copied and your car could be stolen from that. And guess what? Now with these, with keyless starters, guess what? You can use that key fob and your car can be driven away. Aaron, tell us about how Silent can come in with these Faraday products that as we move into this technological age, this is really something people need to start getting smart about.
Yeah, good point. I think you nailed it on the head. I mean, obviously the key fob is a component that, is really easy to solve with one of our signal blocking Faraday bags. But in tune to what you're saying about the realities of travel and international travel, the new Real ID to travel even domestically is going to be in place, which holds a lot of information. And I think when you leave or travel and do something, it triggers kind of an alert in anyone's brain that you got to think about a few more things because you're leaving your bubble. And our backpacks, for example, which I know you travel with the E3 backpack, a backpack, either the E3 or the Essentials backpack, are a beautiful product because, let me just pause and ask you a question. When you shut your laptop, do you shut it down completely or do you just slide it?
Of course, you just close it. I always just close it.
Yeah. So just closing it, for anyone listening, doesn't do anything. It puts it in a mode that it's still accessible via Wi-Fi, location, Bluetooth. So by slipping that inside a Faraday sleeve, ideally in one of our backpacks, which has multiple compartments, you're just buttoning up everything that is so important and valuable in your life and giving you peace of mind so you could just operate, move through dense areas, crowds, airports, commute, whether it doesn't have to be international. It could just be an everyday practice that puts you in such a better position. And one of the more recent, alarming things, which I think you've covered before, but we have, real-time articles that have come out in the last few weeks just about Amazon and Alexa and Echo, and the reality that, and there's been plenty of issues with you're speaking in front of Alexa or your Echo, it's storing all your voice recordings. There's been tons of issues with that. And now it's either you keep and use your Echo and give access to Amazon to have everything you say ever stored, or it loses all its functionality. That's an interesting time to be in, where convenience is really trying to battle between privacy and security. And I think it further highlights the actuality of your phone or your laptop and how many apps, how many things have access to camera, mic, that's just super alarming. And I would hope that people at this time in history, given it's so ever changing, that you take a step in a direction that gives you more security over your finances, your well-being, your data. And I truly believe that comes with Silent. It's a textile product that you drop your devices inside and it instantly blocks Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, GPS, RFID, and really buttons everything up. And the benefits that you get out of it is not only peace of mind, which I mentioned over and over, but you're securing your family, you're securing any business comms. Obviously, there's extreme cases like working with special operators and military, which we're very into, and securing their livelihood. But journalists like yourself, obviously covering breaking news and stories and being a public target in a sense, it comes with real world consequences. And I think everyone has the right and the ability to do something about it, even in this overreaching digital playground that we're all in. So, yeah, it's more serious than it ever has been. And I'll probably never have an opportunity to not say that.
No, I appreciate that. And even, as, it's the summer's getting started, we're here in May now, and protest season is coming back around in Washington, D.C. President Trump started doing rallies again. And these are all different instances where you're going to be in a political setting, in a mass area, where you're not exactly sure who's coming around. And we know, right? We've seen the Democrats use their violence to target people who are who are Trump supporters, or something that I'm thinking about, actually, as we've been discussing this, is the Tesla owners. And, we've seen the Tesla terrorists. I had a friend of mine who actually experienced something like this. They actually sent me the video. I have to put it out yet. But, I worry potentially that even with these, they could use your signal to then go after your Tesla. Right. So it creates this whole, basically, think of what we thought of Antifa over the last decade or up in 2020. That was 5 years ago. Now the technology is advanced to the point where it might not just be that they're going to key your Tesla. What if someone were to try to use this, this technology or copying key fobs, et cetera, as a way to actually take control of your Tesla, stop it while you're in the middle of driving, or do something potentially even worse with it because they've been able to gain access because they got your key fob. And it just occurs to me, Aaron, that there's so many applications for this, for potential, as we're saying, these random acts of terrorism.
Yeah, it's, being in a public setting, just as a regular human, being at a protest or a rally puts you at a high stakes position to all your data is being gathered. And that's a general statement, but anyone doing a geofence, so targeting a certain area and siphoning off the information of everyone that was there attending, whether it was for nefarious reasons or not, you get put into a bucket, and that could lead to consequential things for your regular normal life. And by having a device on yourself, like your cell phone, but more as backup inside a Faraday sleeve, then it gives you kind of a, emergency use case, but you can keep it on you and you're undetectable. And we are just being absolutely harvested as individuals. And I love technology. Silent is not anti-tech by any means, but we're acknowledging that there's real world issues that we need to figure out as a society and overcome, and not let being human be a thing of the past. And it takes incremental change and understanding that not everyone has our best interest. In fact, they don't. And it really comes upon to self-reliance and resilience.
No, it does. And you have to be aware of, I think once you're aware of these issues, and I've been more aware since just getting involved and partnering with Silent, and it's made me much more considerate of the various technologies and how those technologies can in fact be defeated and then worked against us for our safety and for our privacy. So to take back your privacy, head over to slylent.com. That's slnt.com/ POSO for 15% off at checkout with promo code POSO. Aaron, thanks so much for being on, man. Really appreciate it. This is Jack Posobiec, Human Events Daily, Salem Radio Network, Real America's Voice. Quick break, right back.
Staring at their iPhones, the technology of the future is going to be building great things, but doing it in a new way. Doing it with new, incredible facilities, with safer facilities, with people who know, again, how to use their minds, but also use their hands. And I think that is the high-tech future. You know, people criticize. I get sick sometimes of the press. They say that Donald J. Trump wants to bring back the jobs of the past. And I don't think anything could be further from the truth, because I again, was raised by a man who worked at a steel mill of the past. But I guarantee if I went to that steel mill today, it's owned by Cleveland-Cliffs. Sorry, that's a competitor. But they're a good company, too. We can spread the love around. But I guarantee if I went to that facility today, or when I go to this facility here in Berkeley, I don't see the steel mill jobs of the past. I see the steel mill jobs of the future. I see technology allowing us to do something today that my grandfather, God love him, wasn't doing 40 years ago at Armco Steel in Middletown, Ohio. And I know that's how we're going to win the future. That's how we're going to beat the Chinese. That's how we're going to beat every single competitor that America faces. It's going to be by doing great things like what you're doing here at Nucor Steel. And never let anybody tell you that this is not high tech. This is the highest tech industry maybe that I've ever seen, and you're building the America of the future.
Jack Posobiec, we're back here, Salem Radio Network. We're going live to J.D. Vance at the brand opening of the new Core Steel Mill in South Carolina.
So let me just close by saying, my friends, I think that the great American manufacturing comeback has begun, and the world has started to take notice. In just 100 days, the president has attracted trillions of dollars in commitments for new investment in America, including some from new Core Steel. Just yesterday, we saw that business investment in the first quarter of the United States economy, business investment grew by 22%. That was just in a few short months. That's a big number. And we know that with all this additional investment is going to come hundreds of thousands of new, high-paying, high-quality jobs. We're going to see new jobs in artificial intelligence, in deep-water oil production, in chip fabrication, in pharmaceutical factories, research labs, supercomputing facilities, and, of course, in great American-made steel. But the idea is very simple, and the principle is even simpler, that we want to grow up in a country. We want our children to grow up in a country where the things that they need are made by their neighbors and not by foreigners who hate their guts. Where the critical components of American industry are built right here in the United States of America, not in some far-flung region of the world that we can't depend on. And where American jobs for people who are willing to work hard and play by the rules, pay a solid wage, allow you to buy a home and start a family, and where you're proud every single day, just like my grandfather was, of the things that you built with your hands, but also with your minds. I hope that you all are proud, because I am certainly proud to stand here with great American steel workers, and every single day from this day forward that I go out as Vice President of the United States, when I look at those tall skyscrapers or I look at those beautiful bridges, I'm going to remember this day and remember that you guys are building the future of this country. I'm proud of you. We're rooting for you. The President of the United States is going to make your life easier every single day. We had a good start, 100 days. But for the next 1,300 days, President Donald J. Trump and Vice President Vance, we're going to be fighting for you, fighting for your jobs, and fighting for the future that you want to build for your families. God bless you all. Thank you for having me.
All right, that's J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States there, and he's walking off the new Core Steel Mill in South Carolina, giving an incredible speech. Folks, this is what it's all about. And I certainly hope that the vice president and the president himself start to do more of these. You're going to see, look, when we talk about Trump's grand strategy and the great deal for the American people, people say, oh, the tariffs, all the tariffs, all the tariffs. And I get it. It's like the people who go off on tariffs the most, by the way, it's like, tell me you bought NVIDIA high without telling me you bought NVIDIA high. Like, we get it. You're sitting there looking at your stocks. You're saying, oh, my gosh, red numbers all day long. I get it. OK, but think about the structural changes. Stop thinking about your own stock portfolio for 5 seconds and think about the structural changes about what this means for the American people and what this means for our country going forward. And that means, yes, unfortunately, you're going to have to think beyond your own personal bubble and actually think about things that affect the other people who live in our community. People like, oh, I don't know, our neighbors, our families, our churches, our parishes, our children. This is the country that we are going to hand on to our children, not our homes, not our, and that's how we're going to be, by the way, that's what we're going to be defined on. Is what I'm trying to say. Our country, not our homes, not our material possessions. You want to know, I had a priest, he used to tell me, he said, you know what a good place to count your money is? The graveyard. Just go to the graveyard and check your bank account. Go ahead. Go ahead. Because guess what? You can't take it with you, folks. You can't take it with you. But you know what you're like, what, you know what does live on? Your legacy. Your legacy is what carries on. The legacy of your children and the legacy of how you left the country behind you. And I think somewhere along the line, maybe it was the 60s, just saying, we forgot that in America. We forgot to think about legacy and we focused too much on self. too much on me, me, me. And it's no coincidence that it was the 60s as well when God was pushed out of the public square. Well, folks, it's time for America to believe in God yet again. And that is the greatest awakening that you will ever see in your entire life. This is Jack Posobiec, Human Events Daily, Real America's Voice, and the Salem Radio Network. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, you have my permission. Play ashore.